The biggest news hitting the airwaves over the weekend was the fire at the youth hostel at mile 21 on the George Price Highway that claimed the life of 3 young girls. We have a detailed story for you of that incident coming up, and as well we'll take a look at the fire precautions in place there at the youth hostel. Also happening over the weekend, Guatemalan President-elect Jimmy Morales made a stop in Belize as a part of his tour. He met with Prime Minister Dean Barrow on Saturday morning. A handful of protesters gathered in front of the Prime Minister's office to show their displeasure. Hipólito Novello has that story.
He arrived in Belize City at around midnight on Friday. A convoy of vehicles, one of which had in Guatemala's President-elect Jimmy Morales, arrived at the Radisson Fort George Hotel, where Morales and his delegates stayed for the night. There he was greeted by CEO in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lauren Sylvester, and Belize's ambassador to Guatemala, Alexis Rosado. On Saturday morning, 5 Belizeans, namely Giovanni Brackett, the president of COLA, activist Yaya Marin Coleman, BPP leader Patrick Rogers, BTV leader Will Mejia, and supporter Rosalie Staines, held a protest against Morales' presence in Belize and his meeting with Prime Minister Dean Barrow. High-ranking officers manned the entrance of the Wheatfield Tower on Coney Drive, while the protesters asked motorists to blow their horns if they loved Belize. At 8:53 a.m., Prime Minister Dean Barrow arrived, and at 9:12 a.m., Morales was on Coney Drive making his way to Barrow's office. By this time, several GSU officers were on the ground expecting the unexpected. As Morales got closer, so did the protesters. Their plan was to block Morales' entrance by lying flat on Coney Drive.
Watch yourself! Watch yourself! Bye! Go! Yo! Bye! What you mean you don't work it? We lose the country? Hey!
Forced to the ground, Giovanni Brackett lay flat on the side of Coney Drive, guarded by armed GSU officers. Seconds later, he was escorted onto the back of a police mobile.
Giovanni, tell us what happened.
Fighting for my rights.
He was taken to Queen Street Police Station. Meanwhile, Jimmy Morales walked into the Wheatfield Tower to meet with Prime Minister Dean Barrow. The meeting lasted less than 30 minutes, and as he came, he went. Officers attempted to block the media from capturing footage of the president-elect.
So you go to the front, I don't know.
I'm going on the side of the cars, I'm moving.
You cannot stay still, you must be moving.
Sir, we're members of the media.
No problem.
We're not demonstrators out here. We are doing our job as well.
Behind the line. Now we put time over there. You better keep behind the line for me. Right? Keep behind the line.
Jimmy Morales exited Wheatfield Tower compound, his convoy guarded heavily by trigger-ready GSU officers. Will Mejia and Rosalie Staines attempted once again to block Morales' path.
Let's go!
Let's release Lord! If we don't start to protect our patrimony, we will lose it and we'll become slaves again. But what I'm most disappointed in is our Prime Minister, that in the middle of the night, he arranges a meeting with this man, this man that wants to take over our country. And he doesn't tell the Belizean people. And that's what I am most upset about.
We have Guatemalans every day in the Chicky Bull. We have Guatemalan fishermen every day south of PG, all the way up to English Key. And you don't see no force. A few Belizeans come out there today and the police, they rough them. I mean, I don't know what kind of country we're living in, man. But, you know, we can't give up because at the end of the day, this is the home show. We have to keep on fighting, and hopefully at the end of the day, somebody can get the sense and begin to stand up for what they believe in. Because, you know, behind scenes, the amount of inbox messages and all the things that people get when they say, oh, then they with the cars, but they can't even come out to support. I mean, look, I feel like Nigeria right now, but that's true. Because, look, Saturday, what they have for you? You know, I sure if Chronics or somebody out there, me are there, you know. But again, it goes to the education system because most Belizeans don't even know about the claim.
Rocket knows about the claim, and he now knows what the inside of a holding cell looks like. He was released the same day with no charges.
It appears though that holding a placard could be very dangerous. The prison experience, this is my first time, guys, even being held in the AKA's house. It wasn't as bad as I have heard other instances. But yeah, it's quite unfortunate what happened, but this is the price activists has to pay and to advocate on an issue, and I make no apologies about it. And I had, you know, luckily I had good friends who came out, you know, and had 3 attorneys who showed up for me, Arthur Saldiva, Philip Palacio, and Karamusa, who is here with me, you know, who actually made it very possible. I must say though that the police officers were pretty nice. They weren't bad at me in the station, except the GSU, they were a bit overly aggressive. I guess I got a dose of what regular Belizeans got, you know. But nevertheless, though, I think could have been probably a worse situation, but nevertheless, it is what it is. I know individually, I know I had my conviction, and I thought that, you know, that whether it was 10,000 or just one person out there, somebody had to make an initial statement to say, to let this is an enemy of the state. Jimmy Morales has claimed this nation, and he comes in and get protected by our authorities and being treated VIP. If you notice, I was the only one who been arrested. So the majority of the officers came towards me, and next thing I know, Yaya was over the other side and Will, and they were quickly removed after they detained me. But it appears, for whatever reason, I was somehow their main target because I was the only one that was being detained.
Reporting for Love News, Hipólito Novello.
I was fighting for my rights.
According to a release, in a cordial atmosphere, Prime Minister Dean Barrow and President-elect Jimmy Morales congratulated each other for their respective recent victories at the polls. They discussed the bilateral relations between Belize and Guatemala, including a way forward in respect of resolving our historical differences. According to Barrow, they agreed to continue along the path set out in the Framework Agreement and confidence-building measures of 2005 for expanding functional cooperation between the two countries, and each committed to strengthen the processes that already exist for good neighborly relations, so that the two countries may continue to live in peace and as friends pending a legal resolution of the territorial dispute.
We spoke about the nature of the bilateral relations. He indicated that he is committed to working the process. I told him that I appreciated that. He must understand that the pencil of God has no eraser. We're going to be geographically contiguous. We're going to be neighbors forever. There are mechanisms in place. The professional relationship, I think, is good between the militaries, between our foreign ministries. The people-to-people interaction is good. There are trade ties. There are ties of commerce. There are educational exchanges. We spoke about the children from Melchor who come across to go to school in Benke. And I was very clear that both sides needed to understand that the confidence building measures, the protocols in place, and the all-important factor of goodwill all must be put into the pot, stirred properly, to ensure that we avoid flashpoints, to ensure that we can live in peace and good neighborliness, respecting each other's sovereignty, while the question of the dispute or claim is being resolved by legal means or otherwise.
Well, I was going to ask, was there any discussion about the ICJ?
No, because when I said that the matter would need to be resolved peacefully and by way of legal means, I believe we all know that the legal mechanism, the legal function, the legal arrangement that we're talking about is the ICJ, providing both populations agree by way of the referendums that would have to be held. So we didn't get into any detail in terms of the ICJ. He has to settle in. We have to be very sure that in terms of any referendum timetable, it is a timetable that suits Belize. And so I didn't think this was the time to start discussing that sort of detail.
During his campaign, Morales told Guatemalan media that he would do everything in his power to recover Belize. Prime Minister Dean Barrow explained that Morales' comments did not form part of the discussion during the weekend visit.
He's walked back from those comments before arriving in Belize, and this morning I was quite clear, as was he, that we are talking about proceeding on the basis of mutual respect. Two sovereign countries operating a set of mechanisms because there is a dispute, but operating both on the basis of their individual sovereignty and commitment based on that sovereignty.
President-elect Jimmy Morales had indicated from as early as November 6, 2015, to Belize's ambassador Alexis Rosado to Guatemala that he intended to pay a courtesy call on the Prime Minister as part of a visit he is making to all heads of state and government of SICA member countries and Mexico. So, according to Barrow, the government was never trying to keep his visit a secret.
There's no question of any secrecy. We sent out a press release which you will get later. He indicated, well, I've also seen the media saying Belize is an afterthought, that he wasn't intending on coming and then just at the last minute. He met with Ambassador Alexis Rosado on, I believe, the 6th of November, 2 days after the elections, and from then indicated that Belize was part of the itinerary. I've seen situations before where things are said, people indicate they will come to visit, and then it doesn't happen. We were not going to say anything until we had a firm date. It was earlier this week, I believe, that they said first Friday, and then that changed because it appeared that the Mexicans were going to detain him longer, keep him longer than had been anticipated. So we did not actually know for sure whether it was going to be Friday or Saturday until yesterday. And when that was confirmed, we sent out a press release.
President-elect Morales extended a special and personal invitation to Prime Minister Dean Barrow to the presidential inauguration in January 2016. And Prime Minister expressed that he has every intention on attending. Morales was accompanied by Guatemalan Foreign Minister Carlos Raul Morales, the President-elect's diplomatic liaison officer Rodrigo Colmenares, Guatemalan Ambassador in Belize Estuardo Roldan, and Sandra Jovel, Director of Integration. The Prime Minister was accompanied in the meeting by CEO in the Prime Minister's office, Audrey Wallace, CEO in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Lawrence Sylvester, and Ambassador of Belize to Guatemala, Alexis Rosado.